This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses. I wasn't always a fangirl of Stratocaster type guitars, so these days, and I've thought about this, quite often, people, ask you what is your number one guitar, what's your favourite guitar? For me, it's the Blue K-Line, obviously, and I don't really have a close second or third or anything like that really. If I had to keep one guitar, it would be this. The guitar I grabbed most of the time, the guitar I grabbed the first day that I was able to play guitar after LED was born. Now that this thing is in my possession, this one, I don't think I'll ever really be able to get rid of it. I wasn't always a Strat player though, and I thought maybe today I'd talk about some of that stuff and how I ended up finding myself playing a Strat. So I first learnt to play guitar on like a little cheap Encore sort of 3/4 style guitar. I think I got it for my 8th birthday. I think maybe a year or two I played that thing for, maybe 3, just sort of playing chords and learning to play songs from church and that sort of thing. I expressed interest to my dad in playing electric guitar, I believe, quite early on as well. And I think on the old kind of Christian music books and stuff, on one of them there was a Strat, sort of tobacco burst. I can kind of remember that. But my first guitar was an Ibanez Roadstar 2, which is still in the loft somewhere, which was kind of tobacco sunburst. That is sort of a super-ish Strat type thing. It had 2 humbuckers. It was 21 fret, built in Japan. Really quite a cool starting guitar, to be fair. Probably holds up quite well now even. I could get out of the loft and maybe clean it up and stuff. But I, from there, kind of became an Ibanez kind of fanatic, I guess. Although, in my head, I always thought that I would be a Les Paul player one day. So my favourite players were Thin Lizzy, Gary Moore, obviously also Thin Lizzy. Then I got into Iron Maiden, and I guess those guys were kind of Strat players, right? Or sort of hot-rodded Strat players. Then I got into Dream Theater, which also kind of fit in with the Ibanez thing, right? And then into things like Alan Holdsworth, fits in nicely with the Ibanez. So I had guitars like an Ibanez RG7620, which is the grey 7-string with the Floyd Rose. I had a 6-string guitar a bit later on, which was an Ibanez SZ320, which is like the black one, kind of PRS looking with a string through body thing. I guess that's kind of S-type, but a bit different, kind of neck through design, all that sort of stuff. Now, I eventually, I guess through the John Petrucci thing, got into a couple of Music Man guitars. So I had a Silhouette, and then I grabbed a Sub 1. Those were the last kind of guitars that I bought before I went to university, because I thought, well, I won't be able to afford one of these again. And then at university, I had a buddy who had an American Deluxe, I believe that's what they're called, the kind of black with the gold scratch plate and the roller nut. So Pete, I was in a band with him, and I kind of started to, I remember saying to him that I don't want something that sounds like a Strat, I want a more neutral sounding pickup. At the time, I was using that Music Man Silhouette. At some point, that completely changed. I bought a GLL Legacy, the white kind of guitar. It had a maple neck, a really fat neck. I imported that one from America at a time when it was kind of cheap to import stuff over. So that was white, 3 pickup, the 2-point floating trem. So the GLL guitars actually were what George Fullerton and Leo Fender came up with once they'd sold Fender, right? So eventually they started this other company, GLL. They have a bit of a weird headstock, and they're a bit bulkier, I found, than an actual Stratocaster. Like the bodies seem just a bit bigger, the radiuses and the curves and stuff are all a little bit different. But I really like that guitar, and Pete ended up using that to record an album that we did together, or an EP, whatever you would call that thing. And he dug that guitar. And that sort of became my main guitar for quite a while, actually. The Silhouettes then started to feel quite small in comparison, and maybe lacking kind of a bit of character, because that had 3 single coils. And I started to get into that single coil sound, and also the feel of playing a Stratocaster, I guess, or something Strat adjacent. What happened then, I joined a band called Ceasefire, because their guitarist had left, and the manager said you can't play a white guitar because it looks weird. So I ended up then buying my very first Fender guitar, which was the Fender Road-Worn Stratocaster, the 50s. I really loved that guitar. I think I did, at least. My mate Chris Elphick does still have one, and I played that, and it's got like a fairly slimish neck, kind of a V shape. Does have the 7.25 inch radius, is maple, but those old road-worn guitars were really well made, I think, and stand up incredibly well. When you look at the Vintera 2 series, my mate David Beebe was in PMT doing some field work and scouting reports on me. He found one on a stand which looks like this, and to me that does not look like what a £1,049 guitar should look like, you know, with action that you could drive a bus under. So PMT, maybe have a look at that. Anyone who's had any experience with the Vintera 2 guitars, let me know in the comments if you found a good one or a dodgy one or whatever. I'd be happy to hear it. So yeah, that Road Worn was what I played live for a while, kind of when I first started getting back into sort of gigging in the function scene, and also with the band Ceasefire. And then I built a Telecaster myself, and I also got a Tokai from the 80s, which was really nice. And I think because of that, I sold the Road Worn because I was gigging the Tele that I made instead. Then I guess there would have been like a bit of a period where I wasn't playing too many Strats. I had that Tokai. I built myself a Parts Caster Strat as well, and eventually found my way to a K-line Strat. Now, what I really like about these guitars These are built by one guy in Missouri. I think it might be two guys now, but are basically pretty faithful recreations of the Stratocaster thing, right? We've got 21 frets, which actually for live use, I think 22. Corey Wong might have a point on this. I think a 22nd fret would make the Strat pretty much the perfect gigging guitar for me. You know, sometimes when you're playing Journey, Don't Stop Believing, you think, I can't really get there. That can be a bit of an issue. I think other issues that people face, sometimes I hit this switch, and that can be a bit annoying, although basically if you go from neck to these two to middle, all of those basically sound good anyway, so it's not too much of an issue. This volume knob for me is in the perfect place to actually get involved with your playing. One of the things with the PRS DGTSE that I've tried gigging as well is that I find it a bit difficult to get away from this configuration. Somehow a telly still works quite nicely. I guess the switch must be somewhat close, but this kind of works ideally for me. I think a Strat doesn't need to be a heavy guitar either. I think it's not uncommon to find decent examples around the sort of £7.5 range. And I think that is kind of where you should, if you care about that sort of thing, be aiming. I don't think a super heavy Strat necessarily, to me, feels right. You know, it's kind of got this really nice ergonomic shape compared to some of the other guitars at the time. You know, like a Telly is kind of bricky, a Les Paul is kind of bricky. The Strat is just super slinky feeling. Perfect radius for me, I think, is 9.5 to 10 inch radius. I don't think you necessarily need a compound radius or anything like that. Maybe some people who find that, you know, where you're playing up the dusty end more, but I find actually you can play pretty comfortably on even a 7.25 inch radius is not like a crazy thing. I don't think it makes as much difference as it looks like it should on paper, to me at least, as long as the guitar is set up half decently. I don't play with crazy low action or anything, just sort of medium. I'll show a picture of that. I do like to have the pickups kind of lower, and I think that can help, well, even, this is kind of low output pickups anyway. This is Lola Dirty Blondes. They're like between that 5.5K range, and the bridge pickup is slightly hotter. I think that's a thing as well worth doing, so that when you flick to your bridge pickup, you're not getting into that super ice picky territory. A slightly hotter bridge will do that for you, so that things are a little bit more balanced. Or I guess you could bring that bridge pickup up a bit higher, and maybe on the bass end as well. That could be a thing. So I also find that a trem on a Strat doesn't really need to be locking. You know, if the guitar is set up well, I think the Strat vintage trem 6-point does work really surprisingly well, and it makes me sort of lament the years that I spent with a Floyd Rose, because those are so hard to work with. I also really love these vintage, you know, you put your strings in the top and then wrap them up. I think that's one of the better tuners for me. They work incredibly well. If I could only play one type of guitar, it would be the Strat. You can play basically any genre on it, except for maybe the super heavy stuff. But I think it sounds incredible in many types of genres. And yeah, it took me a while to get that. I guess G3 with Steve Vai and Joe Satriani was when I kind of discovered Eric Johnson, who I think would go on to become probably my favourite Strat player, and getting out of that sort of shreddy phase into a more, well, a phase of folks that were influenced by Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, etc. And John Mayer, of course, I guess, used to be a very important kind of modern Strat player that you'd see playing a Strat and you think that kind of looks cool, right? John Frusciante and people like this. So yeah, that's how I fell in love with the Strat, basically. There's not any other type of guitar that I'd rather play, to be honest with you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you a Strat player? Are you a Telly player? Have you got this kind of one guitar thing that really works best for you? I'd be interested to know your thoughts. I think this is the one for me. Anyway, I was using Eric Clean for the intro, and then Sir Lead, which I need to drop into the folder, But yeah, those are the two presets that I was using there. Cheers.